Packing House has the best fish fry around. Hand-breaded Icelandic cod, perch, clam chowder, tartar sauce, coleslaw, potato pancakes, all made in-house from scratch. Dinner includes 3 large pieces of fish, french fries or potato pancakes, tartar sauce, rye bread and butter, clam chowder, coleslaw, and lemon. Packing House, MKE.com.
He failed to act. So now Trump and his allies are launching negative attacks against Joe Biden to hide the truth. Here are the facts. Joe Biden warned the nation in January that Trump had left us unprepared for a pandemic. Then, Biden told Trump he should insist on having American health experts on the ground in China.
I would be on the phone with China and making it clear, we are going to need to be in your country. You have to be open. You have to be clear. We have to know what's going on.
But Trump rolled over for the Chinese. He took their word for it.
The president tweeted, China has been working very hard to contain the coronavirus. The United States greatly appreciates their efforts and transparency.
China, I spoke with President Xi, and they're working very, very hard. And I think it's going to all work out fine.
Trump praised the Chinese 15 times in January and February as the coronavirus spread across the world.
It's a tough situation. I think they're doing a very good job.
Are you concerned about its potential impact on the global economy?
I think that China will do a very good job.
Trump never got a CDC team on the ground in China. And the travel ban he brags about? Trump let in 40,000 travelers from China into America after he signed it. Not exactly airtight. Look around. 22 million Americans are out of work, and we have more officially reported cases and deaths than any other country. Donald Trump left this country unprepared and unprotected for the worst public health and economic crisis in our lifetime. And now we're paying the price. All the negative ads in the world can't change the truth.
The Forum is Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, covering topics from local, national, and everything in between. It may not be what you expect to hear, but we will definitely give you what you need to know. That's The Forum. There's liberal news, there's conservative news, and then there's the truth. Join us for the truth. Good morning. Welcome to the program. Today is Friday, October 2nd, 2020. And I'm sure you have all heard the news of Donald Trump and both Melania Trump testing positive for the coronavirus. I don't know how anybody could possibly be shocked by this. And this calls into question a variety of things. Number one, do the CDC guidelines get revised because the president himself has contracted the coronavirus? In the statement that Donald Trump made on Twitter, he did not make any mention of being asymptomatic. And remember, you've got to pay attention to what the president doesn't say as compared to what he does say. And we also know that with his metabolic syndrome that he has and also his age, he is in the highest risk group for complications to the coronavirus. But if we rewind time about 48 hours, his advisor, Hope Hicks, who was the first in the Trump inner circle to test positive for the coronavirus, they were getting onto a plane yesterday, and there was news footage showing this on just about every channel that I watched, that there was a railing when they're going up on Air Force One off to their next destination. There's a railing. This is prior to Hope Hicks getting her positive test result. And she's touching the railing as people do when you're walking up a very steep flight of steps. And in this case, they were walking up those steps to Air Force One, and she is touching the railing. And then every single person behind her also grabbed that railing, including the president. Now, all Hope Hicks had to do with her positive diagnosis, with her having the coronavirus, is just touch her face once. And we know they've told us to stop touching our face, but we still touch our faces. And not to mention the Trump inner circle, his orbit, they haven't been adhering to any kind of rules that are set forth by the CDC. And it spreads just that quickly. Now, this is complicated for a variety of reasons, and I'm going to get into some of those in a moment. It isn't just an I got you moment. It's not just I told you so. It's not, oh, maybe finally people will take the coronavirus seriously. I mean, we hope that people do. But this puts our country in an even more vulnerable situation because in the event that Donald Trump is incapacitated, Mike Pence will have to assume duties. But then there's some other things that are kind of circling around in the atmosphere as well. Trump was supposed to come to Wisconsin this weekend. There was a rally in La Crosse that was canceled because Governor Tony Evers and also the mayor of La Crosse, both Democrats, did not want Donald Trump having a rally here in Wisconsin because we are in the top two, if not the state in the country that is having the highest rise in coronavirus cases, which is the worst timing ever because now we're up on flu season. I had to turn my heat on this morning, which I don't know why that's such a big deal for us Wisconsin folks. Like turning the heat on is like the end of warm weather until next year. But Trump has not yet canceled the rally in Janesville. That doesn't mean that they won't, but you would think that in trying to promote the seriousness of this, because I believe it's an authentic diagnosis. Some people are saying it's a hoax, that it's spin, that Donald Trump is trying to use this to benefit himself during the campaign. I don't think so. I think he actually has contracted it because he would not want to take, at the very least, 2 weeks off of the campaign trail when we're almost inside of a month until the election. This is the golden hour for any campaign. This is when you ramp up your visits. This is when you increase your ad spending. This is when you really go on the offensive. If you're the incumbent, you go on the offensive against your opponent. Donald Trump being off the campaign trail for these 2 weeks is probably the absolute worst thing that could happen for his campaign. There's no question about that. So I believe the diagnosis is authentic, even though it's extremely difficult to believe anything that he says. There is the official statement from the White House doctor, and I have a copy of it here. I will share it in the group, and it's on official White House letterhead, and it says, physician to the President of the United States, memorandum for Casey McEnany, assistant to the President and White House press secretary, Sean P. Conley. Dr. Fauci is also copied on this, and also the Navy commander. Subject, President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump's COVID-19 test. I released the following information with the permission of Donald J. Trump and First Lady Melania Trump. This evening, I received confirmation that both President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump have tested positive for SARS-CoV-2 virus. This is on official White House letterhead. And then it has the individuals that were copied on this. So this is a very real and authentic diagnosis. But something else that we need to be mindful of, now our enemies see us as even weaker because we are, as a nation, momentarily distracted because Donald Trump has the coronavirus. There are a number of aggressions that some of our enemies are taking in other parts of the world. And because the United States may not be able to act and respond as quickly because Donald Trump, who's supposed to be the commander-in-chief, is going to have to take care of himself during his convalescence. What does this mean for aggressive actions of our enemies? So we got to pay attention to all these things. It is a worst case scenario. Now, the other thing is, does this get his supporters to see how vulnerable he is? Because if he had this strongman image, and of course he made fun of mask wearers. I can remember seeing a press conference where Donald Trump was laughing at the person that was wearing a mask and wouldn't let this reporter ask a question during the press briefing because they were wearing a mask, and Donald Trump literally skipped over this person because she was taking the necessary precaution. Does this change anything? Everything from motorcycle rallies to in-person campaign events where people were not social distancing and were not wearing masks. Does this change anything? And I say all that to say this. If this situation of Trump and his wife being diagnosed and other people in the White House inner circle, whether we get the information of exactly how many people in Trump's orbit have tested positive, I don't know. But will this finally get people to understand the importance of wearing a mask? Like, did it take this, or do you think that people will still be defiant? And this is going to show us exactly how loyal Donald Trump's followers are. And maybe it took him getting the coronavirus for them to see how important this is. Now, I don't know how he takes 2 weeks off of the campaign trail with a month left and 2 more debates left. You understand that the next debate that we have, and I got the debate dates here, I got to get to those in a second. He can't participate in the next debate because he will still be in isolation. It's not, he called it quarantine when he tweeted. This is not quarantine is when you haven't tested positive, but you have been exposed to someone who has tested positive. The president and the first lady are in isolation. There is a difference. But he can't participate in the next debate. Now, I wonder how this is going to fuel some conspiracy theories, because people were saying, oh, there's not going to be a second debate because, the first one was a complete mess and Joe Biden is going to pull out, or Donald Trump is not going to participate in the next debate. Well, now Donald Trump cannot participate in the next debate. He cannot, because he will still be in isolation. This is under the assumption that he proceeds through the coronavirus without major complications. And we don't know that. So this is, do I call it an unusual turn of events? I'm not sure. Good morning to everybody on YouTube, and grab some of your comments. Tammy Reed, good morning. Denise Jones, good morning to me and everybody else. Tutor Reeves, good morning. Sandy J, good morning to you. Linda Johnson says good morning. Anthony Escondel, good morning, Anthony. Gail Williams, good morning. G Collins, good morning to you. Cyber trainer Judy B says, I'm not convinced he really has it. I was skeptical at first because I was expecting something to happen during the month of October where it kind of turns the entire campaign on its ear. And I don't think that Donald Trump would use this scenario as the thing to turn the campaign on its ear, because the one thing we know he likes to do, he likes a crowd. Even when he was advised against having these huge in-person rallies, these indoor in-person rallies, he didn't care, because that is what he feeds off of. He feeds off of the attention. He feeds off of the crowd. He feeds off of the images that are promoted all over, national media of his gigantic crowds. Taking Donald Trump away from his crowds is like trying to wean a baby off of a bottle. I don't think that he would use something like this for political gain, because look, guys, I thought long and hard about this is a hoax. He's just trying to fool us. He's trying to get more media attention. He's just trying to get, more airtime for himself and for his campaign. No, I think he really has it, because he's been promoting the strong man image that the coronavirus is just the flu. And I thought about that as well. I was like, okay, so let's say he doesn't have it. And he has all of these people, including the White House physician, complicit and saying, you know what, guys, we're going to come up with this story. I'm going to say that I have the coronavirus. Melania is going to say that she has it too. And then he miraculously recovers, because let's keep in mind that as disgusting and depraved as that may be, and I'm going to tell you why it's disgusting and depraved. This is a new level of disgusting and depravity even for Donald Trump, because we're getting close to 210,000 people dead. And if Donald Trump uses a fake diagnosis for the coronavirus to prove some kind of point or to score some political acumen, that's really disgusting. That is. Now, I will say personally, as a human being, as a man, as an African-American man whose community has been rocked by COVID-19 worse than any other, as someone who lives just maybe a mile outside of the original epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic in southeastern Wisconsin, as a man who has seen his other friends in his African-American community get sick and pass away from the coronavirus, I have as much sympathy for Donald Trump as he has had for the people in this nation that have gotten sick and died. I'm not going to express this overwhelming sadness because he got the coronavirus. He's lucky that he got it, like that he lasted this long. This just goes to show that everybody is vulnerable. And more than vulnerable, because the White House is supposed to be the most impenetrable place really on earth. And I figured that he was being spared, even though he was extremely reckless with mask wearing. There was one factory tour that Donald Trump did earlier in the summer, and everybody was talking about Trump's not wearing a mask and everybody needs to wear a mask, and that he was getting an awful lot of pressure. But when he got pressure from those on Fox News and those that he looks to for his political guidance, when they were pressuring him to wear a mask, he went on this factory tour and they showed him wearing a mask and it had the presidential seal on it. But then you probably didn't see him wearing a mask again after that. And so if the vulnerability of Trump, the strong man, telling people that the coronavirus is just the flu, gets more people to understand the importance of it, because I'm already projecting past November 3rd. I think that there is a realistic chance, I'm not going to call it my prediction, but a realistic chance that Joe Biden does become president of the United States, because there is no way that the vulnerability that Donald Trump is showing right now by getting sick is going to help his campaign. It's not, because he's going to be off the campaign trail for at least 2 weeks. We're under the assumption he doesn't have the worst complications, because if you look at all of the factors, he is in that category where he would get the worst complications from the virus. This means that if Joe Biden becomes president, a national mask mandate would be easier to implement, because people will say that the coronavirus took Donald Trump out. Not out necessarily because he loses his life, but it takes him out of the campaign trail and off the campaign trail with a month left to go before the election. Because if we want to get back to normal, if you want a normal economy, it's still going to be a really long time, because even if we have slowed the spread and cases are starting to go in the opposite direction, and we come into the year 2021 and we're getting towards springtime, and of course we're going to want to have the summer in 2021 that we didn't have in 2020, I will feel much more comfortable with the CDC and the National Institutes of Health and other pharmaceutical companies that have a vaccine, because there's a likelihood that we could have something by next summer, whatever vaccine they come up with between now and November 3rd, like the president has promised. I wouldn't necessarily trust that, because clinical trials, in order to make sure that the vaccine is safe, not for healthy people, but for people who are already sick. If you have a pre-existing condition, you should be able to take whatever this vaccine is and not have your pre-existing conditions cause you to be more sick because you took this vaccine. I would feel much more comfortable under a Biden administration if and when we can get a national mask mandate until there is a vaccine that we can trust. And I know that there's going to be a high level of skepticism when it comes to the vaccine. I know that. But if you look at the fact that we had an American president that had polio, and then we had the polio germ, the polio vaccine, which nobody gets polio anymore, there's something to that. And I don't believe that these pharmaceutical companies want to kill everybody. No, they don't. When I had a conversation with my doctor, of course I discussed this because I have white doctors, and I'm scared of all white people nowadays, because for some reason I think they're all racist until they prove they're not racist. And I said to my physician, I was like, you trying to kill me? With all your fancy medicine stuff and telling me to take pills and do all these other. And he was like, Sherwin, I need you alive because I only make money when you're alive. We want to keep people alive. We don't want to kill you. Touche. And from that point forward, I had a different level of respect for my physician. So no, I don't believe that whatever the vaccine, and we're going to have another discussion about that, because I have seen recently people that I know for an absolute fact that are not anti-vaxxers become anti-vaxxers because you just can't trust Donald Trump and anything he says about a vaccine. It's almost like we're forced to believe the opposite because he has gaslit the entire country. All right. Let's see what we got here, guys. I'll put my headline up. There you go. You see my headline there? I got so many stories here. Let's start with this one from Axios, America's new clear and present dangers. The coronavirus threat to America is no longer confined by geography or demographics. Why it matters: with a positive test for Donald Trump, the risks are real and immediate. National security. Administration officials recognize that China and other powers know the United States is distracted and could use this window for adventurism and even aggression. Hotspots around the world are on fire, including China's escalation of territorial disputes in the South China Sea, as well as border standoffs between China and India, the world's two most populous countries. Economic factors. After summer signs of life, the American economy is struggling again, with tens of thousands of layoffs this week by Disney and by airlines. Now, with markets racked by uncertainty, businesses won't be getting the signals they need to encourage reopening, let alone returning to semi-normal. Social problems. So many Americans have gotten lazy about virus protection, in part because huge swaths of the public felt untouched by it, that's gone. The virus penetrated the most secure house in the world. Anyone who feels safe from the virus now is foolish. Any stigma that went with masks, always unfounded, should hopefully vanish. In the political realm, with 32 days left to go before the election that both sides call the most vital in American history, the incumbent, age 74, is temporarily off the campaign trail. The challenger, Joe Biden, age 77, has been super cautious about his public appearances and now has a host of new questions about his own plans. And of course, this article goes on and on and on. Joe Biden needs to keep his foot on the gas. If you know that Donald Trump is going to be off the campaign trail for a bare minimum of 2 weeks, come on, Joe, get out there, start burning up some miles on your airplane, start burning up some shoe leather. Now it is time for him to really put his foot on the gas. Now let's get Jill Biden out there. Let's get Kamala Harris out there on the campaign trail. Take advantage of the time in which Donald Trump is down for the count. And if that sounds insensitive to you, well, then I'm sorry. We're living in Trump's America where Trump cannot campaign because he has the coronavirus. We don't know if he's asymptomatic or not. I think if he was asymptomatic, wouldn't he tell us? Let's assume that he's probably going to have some complications just because of his age. This also calls into question, was Joe Biden exposed to Donald Trump during the debate that we saw earlier this week? They were more than 6 feet apart, but I need you guys to know something. 6 feet apart was this standard suggestion of how far people need to social distance because it's relatively easy to remember. And I think when it comes to other viruses, I don't know about other coronaviruses because there's several types. And for those of you that have looked at like your disinfectant bottles and your disinfectant sprays that says, kills the coronavirus, and people say, oh, the coronavirus, we've known about it for a long time. There's many different kinds of coronavirus. So when you look at the labels on your disinfectant sprays and it says it kills the coronavirus, they're talking about other incarnations of it. Remember, this one is COVID-19 for the year 2019 because this is a novel virus. So you guys got to cut that stuff out. So, they knew about the coronavirus because it's on my Lysol bottle. No, there's different kinds. Joe Biden has got to keep going. But also use this as an example is that no one is immune. Tammy Reed says he doesn't care about those 200,000+ deaths. He has already proven to be really disgusting. He has. Ronald Gergen says, I'm listening. You are a wonderful teacher. Thank you. Thank you, Ronald. There's going to be a test at the end of this episode. Douglas Dickerson, I'm saying the same thing. 45 is a businessman all about money. Alden Higgins says, good morning. Good morning to you, sir. Everything is fair in love and war. Biden may have come in contact with Hope, who was the carrier. Who knows, right? I know that Joe Biden is also in that very vulnerable age group. Could you imagine, just for a moment, because you got to think of all the possibilities that exist in this country nowadays, because things that were once impossible and unthinkable are kind of normal now. What if Joe Biden and Donald Trump, two septuagenarians, they're in their 70s, what if they both were down for the count with coronavirus? Do you understand what kind of a tailspin that would put the country in? If Joe Biden had, let's say he did get exposed, what if he shook hands with Donald Trump backstage? We don't know what they did. I know when they came out from separate stage entrances. Donald Trump was stage right. Joe Biden came out stage left. Okay. But what if behind the curtain they were talking? Even though they may not agree politically, old white men have a lot in common. They do. And who knows? And I'm speculating here. But could you imagine what the last month of the campaign looks like? When, first of all, there's not going to be a second debate because Trump can't debate. He's got the Rona. He's got that 19, as my brother calls it. My brother called it the 19. And what if Joe Biden has it too? Effectively no campaigning from the presidential candidates for the last 2 or 3 weeks. And if Pence goes down with it, won't Nancy Pelosi take over? So Linda Johnson, thank you for bringing that up. All right. If they die, right? So if Donald Trump dies first, what do they call that? The succession line in succession is Mike Pence. Then if Mike Pence dies, and we don't want them to die. We don't want them to suffer the same fate as 206,000 Americans. We don't. Boy, oh boy, President Pelosi, that would be so terrible. What would that do to the Supreme Court nomination of Amy Coney Barrett? If I don't know what that would mean. But no, Nancy Pelosi would. That's interesting. If Mike Pence, but they're separate. You don't ever really see the president and the vice president together. If you just think back throughout history, now there are times when the president and the vice president are together, are at events, but they're typically very separate, and that is for national security reasons. The president and the vice president are rarely together at large public gatherings and public events because in the rare chance that something happens to both of them, then the country goes into the ultimate constitutional crisis. And so they're usually kept separate. And because that protocol exists, there is a likelihood that Mike Pence very well may not have been exposed to Donald Trump's Rona, exposed to his 19. Let's go to the Associated Press. Trump moves Wisconsin rally amid surge of COVID-19 cases. President Donald Trump moved a planned Western Wisconsin appearance to elsewhere in the state amid calls from a mayor and the state's governor, both Democrats, that he not hold a rally there due to a surge in coronavirus cases. The director of the La Crosse airport said the event was canceled due to a lease issue, not concerns over the coronavirus. That's such a lie. Wisconsin ranks third among states for per capita increases in cases over the past 2 weeks. State health officials reported 2,887 newly confirmed cases on Thursday, a new daily record, along with 21 more deaths. The state has now seen 125,161 cases and 1,348 deaths since the pandemic began. Let me just take a moment and pause. And I really don't like to have to expound on misery to prove a point, but I'm going to have to expound on misery to prove a point. You know how the Republicans say these terrible things about these liberal-run cities, these Democrat-run cities, and they talk about our Democratic leaders, and they talk about our mayors and our members of Congress, and that, our crime-infested cities because they are run by Democrats? When states are controlled by Republicans, this is what you get. This is a direct reflection of Republicans and Republican-leaning groups wanting to challenge the mask mandate and to try and water it down and to give all these loopholes so people do not have to do their patriotic and fundamental duty to protect themselves and their families and their communities. They have weakened the idea of wearing a mask to protect yourself. They have had rallies. They brought guns to rallies because they want the state opened up. I want you to know that all of that has been supported by the Republican Party almost universally. Where have you seen a leading Republican in this country saying, no, wear masks, stay home, social distance? Have the Republicans even been on the same page as the Democrats or as public health experts to protect their own voters? They have not. They have not. And it's that wicked approach to politics that the Republicans have, and because they know that there are large cities that have much more diversity that need additional resources, because the more people you have in your city, the more issues you're going to have to deal with. You're going to need more cops, you're going to need more firefighters, you're going to need more resources for roads, for bridges, for schools. But if the Republicans, this tight grip that they have had, a lot of it because of gerrymandering, can have this negative influence on the death tolls in states because of the coronavirus, it also can have that same negative impact on Democratic-run cities. Because the city of Milwaukee can do a whole bunch of things, but when it comes to things like raising taxes, we've got to get permission from the state. And the state does not give it to us. And so when we have exacerbating problems in the city of Milwaukee, a lot of it is because we have the ideas of what can make things better. Maybe not fix all of the problems, but what can mitigate some of the damage from the problems that we have, being the only Class A city in the state. And the Republicans say no. And they know that our negative indicators are going to go up, and they use that to try and say it's the Democrat-run city's fault. It's the elected officials that are Democrats that are causing Milwaukee all of this pain and all of this strife, when it's them behind the scenes ignoring our request for more resources so we can handle our own problems. And so when you blow that up to a larger level, whether it be the entire state, the whole Midwest, or the country, and you look at Republican-run states and their death tolls are highest. And then I would ask you, this is a rhetorical question, for what reason do you have to support a Republican when they are in complete opposition to mitigating a virus that the president and the first lady have? They have a lot of responsibility in this, so we cannot let history forget that. We are where we are because the Republicans just pure obstinance. They're calling it a China virus. It can't affect Americans. It's almost like we're not a human family. And if something comes from another country, when it gets to America, it's going to go away because we're bigger, we're stronger, we're tougher than the Chinese. Clearly not, because the president is off the campaign trail with 2 weeks, for 2 full weeks, and there's a month left before the election. What do we got here? Oh, we got to talk about the debates. 2020 presidential debate calendar, what we need to know. So when is the next debate? The first one was on September 29th, and I'm sure you all watched that creative display of ideas. The next, the vice presidential debate, oh, it's going to be a good one. So why don't we do this? Why don't you guys mark your calendar for October 7th? Because there is no way that the coronavirus and the Republicans' blind eye that they turn toward it does not become the central topic of the vice presidential debate. Because here's the thing, that one might get canceled too, because if Donald Trump becomes symptomatic, and we will know by October 7th, what was that, 5 days from now? Mike Pence might not be able to participate in the vice presidential debate if he is assuming the duties of the presidency. Like, he won't be able to take time to debate Kamala Harris. He would effectively be the acting president. So even when the president gets a particular type of routine medical procedure where he has to go under anesthesia, and we did get some reports that happened a couple of weeks ago, but it could be like a colonoscopy. Vice President Pence has to be the acting president, because if the president is under anesthesia and he's incapacitated, Mike Pence is the president. And so we have to make sure that we're watching all of these things, because there may not be a vice presidential debate. And if there is, I want to hear what Mike Pence has to say about the coronavirus, because he can't echo Donald Trump's same talking points because Trump has contracted it. And so I want to see if they turn the corner, and I'm not going to do a whole I told you so and I told you Republicans that you need to start taking this seriously. And I hate that it would take for Donald Trump to get the coronavirus. I hate that. But if we want to have an economy, if we want to have a summer, if we want to get back to whatever normal is, even though America, I believe, is forever changed, because there are some people who have so adjusted their lifestyles that they just may want to do less in public, even when things get safe. As tough as it may be for some of you, some parents want to homeschool their children because they have much more control over the curriculum. Some people have found that they can work from home just as effectively. Not everybody. And I said that to say this: when we're talking about millions of people whose lives have been changed personally, professionally, the lives of, their whole families and the whole structure of how they live their lives have been changed. Some people are going to get used to it and find additional productivity. So the economy may be forever changed. Vice presidential debate location, Kingsbury Hall at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. That's on October 7th. How to watch. The New York Times will have an uninterrupted live stream and provide insights and analysis. The second presidential debate, the one that Donald Trump cannot attend because he is in isolation. Location, the Adrian Arsht Center for the Performing Arts in Miami, Florida. This debate was originally scheduled to take place at the University of Michigan, which said it wouldn't host the debate because of concerns over the pandemic. I love how these Democrat-run states where a Democratic governor, Gretchen Whitmer, kicked Donald Trump out from having the debate on October 15th, which they have not yet officially canceled the October 15th debate, but who would go to it? Why would you can't go? The president, unless Joe Biden does the thing where Joe Biden is there at the debate, and then where Donald Trump is supposed to be standing, there's an empty chair. And then Joe Biden would be able to talk. Maybe they should have the debate because Joe Biden would be able to get a word in edgewise. Linda Johnson says, and if Pence goes down, we already talked about that. Won't Nancy Pelosi take over? Tammy Reed says, yeah, Pence/Trump are rarely together. And Cheney Bush too, but I feel Obama Biden were together more than most. Maybe I'm mistaken. You know, it's hard to tell. I mean, I know that so there are times when the president and the vice president are certainly together because they have to be, because of like national security briefings, which now Mike Pence needs to get all of them. And when they're in the Oval Office, they would be together. But I don't know how often they were together at like big public events. So as an example, I know that Barack Obama, he loved him some Wisconsin. He did. He used to come here a lot. And we got used to seeing him a lot. He came all the time. He came we do a Labor Fest at the Summerfest grounds, our big festival park here in Milwaukee. So every Labor Day Monday, there's a big old parade and there's a bunch of events. And then politicians come and they get the crowd all fired up every September, every Labor Day. And Joe Biden, I don't think has ever been, I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, I swear you guys will correct me, but when Barack Obama came to Labor Fest, Joe Biden didn't attend. And when I think of a person who represents organized labor, Joe Biden represents organized labor, blue collar. He always talks about Scranton. Is he from Scranton? Is he from Delaware? I don't know where Joe Biden is from, whatever. But no, I don't think he ever came to Labor Fest, which was very much on purpose. So big public events, they're always a security threat for a president. The president and the vice president are rarely seen together. Alden Higgins says, I'm sorry, I would never vote for Rethuglican. I mean, especially as Black people, I guess we probably could talk about the Proud Boys. That was what I meant to discuss this morning, but Trump getting the Rona just turned everything upside down, because now we have to watch how other people respond and how other nations respond when they know that the United States is more vulnerable than ever. Trump being president created a sense of vulnerability. And now with him being essentially out of the spotlight and off of the campaign trail for the next 2 weeks, and maybe even passing off some of his other daily presidential duties, whatever those were, how are our enemies going to react to that? So we have a lot to watch. The thing with the Proud Boys, it seems like, and I want to take them seriously, but then when I found out the leader of the Proud Boys, which is they call themselves this chauvinist, male chauvinist, proud to be white organization, but the leader of the Proud Boys is also the leader of Latinos for Trump, and I believe Texas. So the state director of Latinos for Trump is the founder or the executive director of the Proud Boys, which makes no sense, because if there is a group that has been disrespected, probably more than anybody else, and Black folks, it's status quo to disrespect us, right? So that comes with the territory. But how he specifically treated those, Mexico, Central America, remember the migrant caravans where he said they're all murderers and rapists that are coming up here. And then the policy where children were separated from their families and put in cages. And then I covered this extensively. This is probably going back to 2018 when it was reaching a real fever pitch, when there was this fear of these migrant caravans. And I guess the question is, whatever happened to the migrant caravans? They all just stop and just disappear? But there was a situation where parents would get separated from their children. And there were a number of children that actually got lost, where we couldn't track them anymore because the Department of Homeland Security and other federal agencies were not doing a very good job of tracking these children. And then there was a fear that some of these children were being taken into human sex trafficking, which I know for an absolute fact happened, because when you lose track of children, and there were people that were posing as family members, going to pick children up saying that they were the aunt or the uncle. And of course, you don't have to have any official documentation because you can't even prove who the child is, because the child is a migrant. And so there were children that were disappearing all over the place. And then there was a phone number, and I can remember doing a story on, so if you're a mother or a father and you got separated from your child at the border, there was a number that was assigned to you. So they were able to assign numbers to the parents or the guardian or whoever the adult was that arrived with that child, okay? And then the child was also given the same number. So there was a number that corresponded to the parent, the guardian, whoever the adult was the child was traveling with. That number was also given to the child. And there was a phone number that was given to people. And migrants that were captured at the border were literally treated like prisoners. You get one phone call. Your one phone call is either for your legal representation or calling a family member of the United States, or you use your one phone call to try and find out where your child is. When I read between the lines in that, and I got really down to the fine details of it, because I was just appalled that America would have essentially concentration camps and internment camps again in the 21st century, but I don't know why I'm shocked by any of that. And I noticed they had a name for the number, the identifying number that they would give the parent, and the same identifying number that they would give the child. And I tried to make a big deal out of this. I don't know, a few people listened, most people didn't care. And they had a name for the number system. It's called an A number, the letter A, first letter of the alphabet, the A number system. And I did a little bit more research on, like, how did they come up with that? Like, why would they give it some unusual and unnecessary arbitrary title? And remember, Donald Trump and his administration are very telepathic. Sometimes they're overt, sometimes they're covert. When you learn to listen to what he doesn't say as opposed to what he does say, you actually can find out much more. The A numbers were used in Nazi Germany. That was a part of a system in which they tracked Jews throughout Europe. I don't know if that is why they chose an A number specifically, but it signaled to these groups, you know, the rise in white supremacist groups who Donald Trump's own FBI director said are the biggest threat to national security, more than even Muslim terrorists. But those little signals, because the people that are paying attention to Donald Trump read and understand the granular details, and he is able to communicate to them through covert language, like when he told the Proud Boys to stand back, but also to stand by. And what did they do? Use it as a call to arms. They came out with a logo, they came out with t-shirts. And so if you follow all of these little covert things that Donald Trump has said, he has signaled to these groups that you need to rise up and it's safe for you to organize again. And that is why we find ourselves exactly where we are. How I got on all of that to respond to Alden Higgins' comments saying he would never vote for a Republican, well, fair enough. You know what? If there was a time to vote for a Republican, I think I said all that because Latinos and Hispanics have been just marginalized and treated worse. Like when he was throwing the paper towels out in Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico didn't get any aid because they had, I think it was hurricane. I can't remember the hurricane. Hurricane Maria, maybe. I don't know what it was. Kids in cages, you know, deporting people in mass numbers. He's treated that group of Americans or soon to be Americans or hopeful Americans worse than anybody else. That's why it kind of threw me for a loop that the leader of the Proud Boys was also the executive director of Latinos for Trump in Texas. So I didn't ever want to get to a point where I didn't and couldn't trust the things in my country that I could always trust, right? Even if it's bad stuff, at least you know where things are at. Like, you ever have somebody walk into your room and your room looks messy to them, but it doesn't look messy to you because you know exactly where everything is? I used to get real mad at my mom because I was a messy teenage kid. I just put things, I had my own order, which was disorder. And I knew where my stuff was. I knew where my school books were and my outfits and the clothes I was going to wear. I just knew where my things were. And my mom would get real frustrated. That's how I knew she was really mad at me, because if she ever had to clean my room, then she was very angry. Because I'm supposed to clean my room, but I didn't like to because And I remember getting really upset because I knew where everything was. I mean, yeah, it was chaos. Yes, it was in disarray, but I knew where to find my stuff. Not to anybody else, it looked probably a terrible mess, but I knew where things were. The United States to me is the exact same way. It is a mess. It is wrought with fraud and discrimination and lying and cheating and stealing and hurting vulnerable people. But I know those things. I know what neighborhoods in the city of Milwaukee that I should not go in. Now, I should be able to go anywhere, and I can have that attitude if I want. But I'm also a self-victim blamer because I know that there's places in this city that have formed their own specific enclaves and cultures that are devoid of Black and brown culture, but they still try to be like urban neighborhoods. Bayview is a perfect example. Some of the most racist white people I've ever seen are in Bayview. Bayview is a city, is a neighborhood in the city of Milwaukee, but it has its own, like, we want to have a white city neighborhood. It's weird. And if I go to Bayview for whatever the reason is, I mean, there's nice things there, I guess. But if something happens, or if I have a run-in, or if I have a disagreement with somebody, or if I go to a restaurant and I get bad customer service, I say to myself, I shouldn't have come. It's my fault for coming. But at least I know that. And as a Black man in this city, you have to have a particular type of knowledge in where to go and what to do so you can maximize your safety. Now, with all that being said, the cops are always going to be a threat, no matter what. Even if you're following the law and listening to the cop and complying, doesn't matter. And so if you know where the organized chaos is, it makes life a little bit easier. It doesn't make it perfect, but it helps you navigate. The thing about the United States is that I can't even trust the things that I couldn't trust before because I had a level of trust in the things that I couldn't trust. Everything has been redefined, and I don't know what Joe Biden does with that. Life has been redefined for Black people in this country. It wasn't just George Floyd, but I think that sparked a level of activism to where people are permanently changed. And there are folks, young people, much younger than me, well, hell, damn near half the country is younger than me. But it's going to change how they do business. It's going to change where they spend their money. It's going to change their entire outlook on democracy forever, especially those young people, you know, in their late teens, early 20s, when I would call their adult formative years. I don't know how Joe Biden and Kamala Harris presidency deal with this newfound understanding of how sinister America can be. I don't know how anybody deals with that. In fact, the only people that may be best equipped to help us navigate through this new world, where young people are not going to take this mess anymore. The Jacob Blake shooting was another example. When the police fire their service weapons at someone, in which the original video that we see looks to be excessive force and police brutality and another officer-involved shooting, people are going to riot. The level of protests have been elevated because people have simply had enough. That is a reality in America. If it happens in Sacramento, if it happens in Dallas, if it happens in Chicago, if it happens in Detroit, likely communities that are communities of color are going to respond the same way. That is a new America. There was a time when the police would kill somebody, which they do all the time. And then you would start with, you know, a gathering of a crowd, then there'd be some marches, and then the organizers would come out of the woodwork, and then there'd be a plan of action. There'd be a series of meetings with the mayor and with other officials. How are we going to mitigate this problem? We have essentially eliminated that entire step and have gone right to showing America that nothing is safe, nothing will stand, no business can stand, and everything, and I mean everything, can be burned down. And Donald Trump is in part responsible for that because the norms that we had, even the things that we didn't like, were reasonably predictable in this country. And so that is why I'm in so much support of the young leaders that are running for public office, especially in southeastern Wisconsin, specifically in Milwaukee, because they see things differently. I've gotten used to white people. I have. And I also am from a generation that you did not arise their suspicions. You played on their ignorance about race. Because if you're a Black person, you act and walk and talk a certain way, the white people still don't like you, but they're not threatened by you, or they're less threatened by you. Then the threat becomes different. It's not the threat that we're violent thugs and we're going to, I don't know, steal their gold teeth out of their mouths. Not that kind of threat. Then the threat becomes, wow, this Black is smart and articulate. He or she may take my job. That's a different kind of threat that we have to deal with in the workplace. And I don't know if that one gets discussed very often. Not the Black thug or whatever their stereotypes are for us, because they change often. But the smart black person that white people believe get jobs and get opportunities and get promotions because of affirmative action. Well, I got to watch myself because these blacks, they have affirmative action. If they get the job, it's because they were black. And if they didn't get the job, they would sue the company. It's people that still actually believe that. But how I was, and my generation, I would say, was instructed to act was the first generation born immediately after the federal legislation that granted more civil rights than black people had had in 100 years. So you had Reconstruction, you have a 100-year gap of Jim Crow, and then you had federal legislation passed between 1964 and 1965, really every year in the mid to late 1960s, every year of the Johnson administration. And then I'm born in 75. And so my parents, who come from the Jim Crow South, saw that dark ages of the 100 years of Jim Crow, had myself and had my brother in a world in which they didn't want us to have to deal with what they saw. And so there was a very specific code of instructions of how you act. Don't stick out. Don't make noise. Don't be a rabble rouser. You want to be black? You're black at home. When you're out there in public, act as if you are just a member of the public so you don't get singled out. Because if, just like when cops catch the speeder, don't they always say if you have a red car, they're going to pick you out because it's easier to spot the red car? Because when cops are tracking speeders, I don't even know, do cops even track speeders anymore? Yeah, I guess they do. Some of y'all probably got speeding tickets. Forum listeners look like they drive fast. The cop only gets one reading. They only get one number for all of the cars that are passing by. And they go and they pick the red one. Don't be the red car if you're black. It's a very oppressive way to live. I mean, you can get by. It's not perfect, but you can be okay. I mean, you hopefully can make it to middle age if you're black, I suppose. But it's not even a guarantee. But there's a younger generation that shouldn't have to live that way. As I had all this time to think and being home, quarantined and isolated or whatever the hell we call it with the coronavirus, I've had an awful lot of time to just reflect on my life. And I had to live a repressed life because of my race, through no fault of my own, because if you arise the suspicions and fears of white people, they'll kill you. And it's really disgusting when you think about it, because there's nothing free about that in the freest country that's supposed to have ever existed. What do you got? Eileen Seeger, good morning. Pence is a much better leader and communicator than Trump. I listened to several of Pence's coronavirus task force meetings, and he handled them professionally while inserting the right amount of ass kissing to Trump. He was competent. Don't let that fool you. So Pence seems competent when compared to Donald Trump, but he is just as much as a bigot and a homophobe and a religious evangelical, more so than Donald Trump. Pence is more dangerous because he is smarter. Pence is more dangerous because he has actual executive experience in the state of Indiana. And you don't have to listen to me. If you go and check his record as governor of Indiana, he is one of the most politically obstinate, bigoted, evangelical Republicans we can find. Mike Pence, in many aspects, while I would say he's probably smart, like he understands how government works much better than Donald Trump, he's much more surgical because he can have this public persona where he can ease fears. He's very monotone, doesn't really show a heck of a lot of emotion, but he's a very calculated politician. We are not in better shape. Women are not in better shape. People of color, minorities, migrants, immigrants are not in better shape if Mike Pence is president even for a single day. Tammy Reed says, I have a red car. Thankfully, I have not gotten a speeding ticket yet. You better knock on wood. I'm over here wearing a red shirt. I might be walking down the street because I'm known to walk down the street. Cops might pull me over for walking too fast because I'm wearing a red shirt. All right, I went off the rails a little bit, guys. What do I got here? We did the presidential debates. What is this one here? Trump and Melania test positive for coronavirus. President vows to begin quarantine immediately. From Washington, D.C., President Donald Trump has tested positive for the coronavirus, a stunning development that came hours after he confirmed one of his longest-serving aides, with whom he had recently traveled, had also received a positive test results. What's this one from the Business Insider? Trump's COVID-19 diagnosis wipes out half of the most important resource, his campaign time. President Donald Trump was down 8 points in an average of national polls when he tested positive for coronavirus. Trump trails Joe Biden by just over 2 points in Florida and just under 6 points in Pennsylvania, 2 states essential for his reelection efforts. So if I was Joe Biden, which I'm clearly not, put the foot on the gas. If there were states where Biden was within the margin of error or down by a point or two, Donald Trump cannot campaign there because Donald Trump essentially can't leave the White House. He can't leave whatever little room he's in, wherever he's at. I mean, I'm sure he's going to be walking all over the White House in his pajamas and his slippers, but whatever. Trump cannot compete with Joe Biden's campaign stops. And so if there are places in which Joe Biden is scratching at the surface as far as the polls go, Biden needs to live in those states, increase his ad spending. And I think that there's a sympathetic tone that you take. Because I guess if this was a semi-normal state of affairs, you'd be like, oh no, the president's sick. That sucks. Because Donald Trump supporters, I come to find out, they're not tough and macho and impervious to danger and to fear. They're more vulnerable than anybody else because they believe that their artificially created way of life and their culture is under attack. They're scared. And it's this, they're synonymous, anger and fear. People that do not ever want to admit that they are fearful because they have this facade, they have this veneer, they don't want to show any weakness or vulnerability, they get angry. And it also makes a lot of sense. Some of the most angry people that you know, for whatever reason, they cry the most. They can't deal with their emotions. And so Donald Trump supporters are afraid. And in dealing with people that are afraid, you don't appeal to their anger. You appeal to their fear, but in a very particular way. Because there's some folks that they don't know what to do now. Their fearless leader is down for the count. Joe Biden can approach those folks because there's not all that much difference between someone who would vote for and support Joe Biden because of his actual policies, because of what Joe Biden plans to do as far as rebuilding the economy and giving much more attention and credibility to working people and easing the taxes on working families. Like a lot of those Trump supporters that voted, especially the poor ones, Donald Trump capitalized off of their fears and their woes, a lot of their economic fears and woes, and they put him on this really weird pedestal because he supposedly, we thought, was a billionaire. And wow, if I support this billionaire guy, he's going to help me become a billionaire as well. No, he's not. That's the whole point. You get rich people in power, so they keep poor people poor. Rich people don't get into power to share the secrets of their wealth. Rich people get into power so that policies are reflective of how you stay rich. And one way in which you can stay rich in this country is to make sure that wages are low. Whenever you just have a class of people, and maybe it's the top 10%, maybe it's the top 5, the top 1%, top 10 to 1%, and you have a system where they work as little as possible, but they have their own labor force built into their business endeavor or their capitalist endeavor. And essentially they have people working for them, performing their duties and their labors, not just in the companies and the corporations that they own, but just in life. And what rich people do, it doesn't matter how rich you are, you live off of the surplus of other people's labor. If there's a Walmart associate somewhere in this country that makes $7.25 an hour, and I have a feeling they may still exist, I'll even go up to $10 an hour. If there's a Walmart associate who believes that they have a good job and there's some room for advancement, because Walmart will promote you, and they even promote Black people, shocking, but they do. But they're making $10 an hour for many, many years of their time at Walmart. And we know the Walton family, the wealthiest family, certainly in America, and they're on par with some of the wealthiest families, not necessarily individual people, but as a family, some of the wealthiest families in the world. And if there's a Walmart associate that makes $10 an hour, but they're helping customers, and they help customers all day. Maybe they work 8 hours, maybe they work on the weekends, maybe they work 10, 12 hours a day. And that one $10 associate is helping Walmart customers pick out a TV, or pick out a new lawnmower, or pick out a couple of bikes for the kids. And you think about, while you're paying that one Walmart associate $10 an hour, and they're helping all of these customers make big ticket buying decisions, that one $10 an hour employee can potentially help Walmart make thousands of dollars in products that are sold. And so what the Walton family is able to do, and I'm totally simplifying this, is live off of the surplus that is created because of the mismatch between what you pay that Walmart employee and the profit that Walmart can make with the sale of the products from that $10 an hour employee. And so when rich people get into power, it is that surplus in which they live off of, and the policies will be reflective of that. But you can tell poor people a lot of things. You can tell working class people a lot of things, because there is no worse feeling than being destitute. You'll respond to anything. Shouldn't say anything. But when it comes to money, because people want to find a way to get rich. It is why when you go to a casino, those aren't rich people at the casino. Rich people don't gamble. I mean, rich people gamble with like your mortgages and your lives, but you're not going to find a multimillionaire playing the lottery. It's what poor people do. That's why it is necessary to have these incredible taxes on lotteries to put right back into the communities and the neighborhoods that the money is coming out of. That is why Potawatomi, who I would call a very good corporate citizen, Potawatomi, which is a native tribe, native to Wisconsin, they found the best way to get the return on their investment for their proprietary native lands, turn it into a casino. Brilliant. If you only have a small plot of land compared to what you had some time ago, rather, and you want to maximize the amount of money you can make per square foot, because that's what it's all about. If I've got 100 square feet of space for my business, what business can I be in? If I have 1,000 square feet for my business, what can I do to maximize that square footage to make as much money as I can? Put a slot machine on it. Or restaurants, as an example. The way they maximize their square footage is put as many tables in that restaurant as you can and turn those tables over. You can't have somebody ordering just some cheese sticks and sitting there all day. You got to get those people out, because the square footage that they're taking up at that restaurant, that's supposed to be profit when you're turning these tables over. That is why so many restaurants have gone out of business, because they weren't making money until they were packed, until all of the square footage that they have is turning over as much profit as possible. Casino, the exact same way. You live off of the surplus that is created by your business endeavors. And I said all that to say this: Joe Biden can appeal to those folks that want to try and get some of the surplus that they are creating for the people that they work for. Even in the event that you work for a company and you make a good wage, and people will be so proud of you when you get that job, or you get your dream job or your dream promotion, and maybe you make $175,000 a year. That ain't too shabby, especially if you live in the upper Midwest. If you live in the upper Midwest, you make $175K a year, you're all right. You're gonna make it. You're making $100 grand. I mean, depending upon how many kids you got and all sorts of other financial obligations. I mean, you can do okay. But if they're paying you $100 grand, they're making millions. They're making millions of dollars. Or even if it's a nonprofit, right? Because you got to wonder, well, nonprofits are technically nonprofit, unless it's a Trump nonprofit and then they just use the money to buy boats and whatever. But how does a nonprofit, manager or executive director, especially a grant-funded nonprofit, first of all, you need to pay people a lot of money. That's how you get the best talent. But also, if you have an executive director of a nonprofit, that's just one example, and they're doing a very good job of whatever that nonprofit is set out to do, whatever impact it's supposed to have, you can apply for more grants the more effective your nonprofit organization is, which allows you to get more money and pay more money to your support staff, because money begets more money. Professional athletes. Holy smokes, how in the world can you pay somebody $100 million contract? What's LeBron James's contract, $100 trillion or something? if they're paying LeBron James and the LA Lakers are going to win the finals, then the owners of the teams are making billions. Because the amount of revenue that LeBron James can generate, whether it be licensing from video games or jersey sales or ticket sales, I guess there aren't ticket sales anymore, or whatever revenue he can generate, his salary is a drop in the bucket. College athletes, another example. They're creating all of this money and this wealth and this attention, especially when a college football team, as an example, wins a national championship. Kids want to enroll in that school, don't they? Enrollments go up. Other star athletes want to go and they want to play there. They're selling jerseys. They're selling out tickets. They are not making any money. So giving a kid a scholarship to be a superstar at a college or a university is a cash cow. And that is why there has been this movement over the years to pay college athletes. I'm against it, but I'm not against it for the reasons that you think. Because I believe that the degrees that young people can earn when they're on full academic or athletic scholarships is more than any amount of money that you could potentially pay them, because when you get an education from a university, you become universal. Tammy Reed says, definitely agree with Sherwin's assessment of Pence. He speaks so well, but that man is dangerous. Check his Indiana record. Oh, looks like I went over my time today. That's all it takes, I guess, is for Donald Trump to get the Rona. I just get to yapping off at the mouth. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate you joining me. Hope you guys have a good weekend. Why don't we monitor this situation very, very closely with your president and your first lady diagnosed with COVID-19, because this very well can have major impacts, not just here, not just on the campaign trail, not just with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, but there could be impacts internationally that are felt from President Trump being down for the count. As always, guys, have yourselves a good weekend. Please stay safe, wear a mask, fill out your census, and I'll see everybody on Monday.